All right. So hi everyone. My name is Megan Kennedy. Um, and I am the vice president of IEEE HCAN, which is the honor society in the ECE department. Forewarning, I am a student just like you guys, so I'm not going to be a master at all of the things that I'm going to be covering because I'm learning it as well as you guys are all learning it. Hopefully, if this does take off a little more, we might get like a professor every now and then to come in on like some of the specialty topics, like maybe for electronics, have like Paul Bergstrom come in, or Dr. Shane come in for the digital logic microcontroller portion. But um, most of the time it's just going to be a few of us students just leading some review and review questions for you guys. So kind of how we're going to have this structured is we're going to have a presentation. I can't imagine the presentations always lasting like the full 30 minutes because we're going to have it like supposed to be tech time. So in case another class has this room after us. But I'll always try to have like 10 questions, which might be more than what the sections actually have on the exam. But it'll just give you more practice at the problems, and there'll be solutions in the class. If you are online, I will be pulling up the questions so you guys can screenshot them. And then at the end, when the video gets sent out and after class or the class, I will send out the solutions as well. Is there any question about how we're going to kind of structure these? No. Okay. So the first like 2 units we're going to cover today are going to be like ethics of engineering and then also the economics of engineering. So these two are normally like smaller sections on the FE, or they have between like 3 and 5 questions each. I could be wrong on the numbers, but it's somewhere around there. And as you can imagine, ethics is just being like, how do you make ethical decisions when you are in your field of practice? And then economics, because every engineering project involves money. So how do you use economics properly? So to understand kind of like engineering ethics, it's like, what are the moral principles that you think will happen? Like, would this affect the environment? Would this affect society? Those are all the things that you have to be keeping in mind. And for engineering ethics, you are held accountable if anything wrong happens. So it's important to keep ethics in mind when you are doing your practices, and that's why it's on the exam. So some core principles is being like honest and have integrity. And so that means like being honest with yourself and being honest with like your customers and being honest with like society, like this is what's going to happen with the project. And then more importantly, it's like the safety and welfare. So making sure that every design choice you make is safe and normally follows like safety standards that are already in place. And if safety is compromised at all, that is a very bad thing and normally against the engineering ethic principles. And you'll actually see a lot of those on like the practice exams. It's like, oh, project A has this safety requirement, project B has this other one, but the companies like don't follow these. Like, does that break engineering ethics or not? Well, kind of obvious, right? And then the other one is like confidentiality and intellectual property. So like your concepts and ideas are your property, like you have ownership to those. Or if it's a company that you are being consulting to, their like ideas are their property. So you can't like sell those out. So that's against like ethics. And accepting, I think this gets later, but accepting gifts from people is not good. It's against engineering ethics as well to accept like monetary value gifts from like your like different project groups or like different people that are like coming to you for work. So those are questions you will see that I have seen on previous exams or practice exams. So, and then, so for us, we have professional standards, and that would be like what falls under IEEE or NEC or like any other engineering standards you can think of. These are just to make sure that we align our projects with like other safety standards or protocols that are already in place because someone else messed up. So we don't want the same mess up to happen. So you have these standards, you have these principles in place. Then there is the licensing's importance. This helps you validate experience and ensuring public safety. This is more like when you're work, because for an FE, you can't sign off on a design. You are just a working engineer on the project. But then a professional engineer is allowed to sign off. That is their licensing. They're saying they've looked over everything. Everything follows standards. Everything follows procedures and is safe. That is kind of the importance of like the licensing is that you are not the final step, but there is one more check, and there might be questions on that, but that might be more when you take your PE. Like they'll ask more in-depth questions, like, "Hey, if this engineer did something wrong and you didn't check it, who's at fault?" Well, the person that signed off on it. And then, as a professional standard, you'll always be learning in industry. I personally haven't ran into any questions that pertains to just continuing your education or just learning it throughout, but it is a possibility that it could pop up on the exam. So, are there any questions so far? Also, I'm a fast talker, so if anyone needs me to slow down or anything. This is just a big bullet point that ethical engineering is not just a responsibility, it's also a commitment to society, and it's mostly because we want everything to be safe. We don't want bridges falling down, we don't want power lines causing blackouts and starting fires and everything. So we just want everything to be safe for everyone to have a better experience. All right. So then here's some of like common ethical challenges you'll encounter on the exam or potentially even in your career is when conflicts arise and you have personal interests that are compromised. Those can lead to unethical decisions. This is kind of like what I was talking about earlier when people are potentially going to gift you stuff that conflicts with interest sometimes, and it's not the best thing in the world. Also, you have a duty to report unsafe conditions. This can be like at the work site or even on plans that you already have seen. It's better to report it than to like just let it slide under the rug and then someone gets hurt later on. And then intellectual property disputes. These happen when people debate on who actually had the idea and who has the ownership of those rights. And I don't know the best way to like say it than kind of what the paragraph says, which is kind of small, which I do apologize. I'll figure out how to make the screen bigger at some point. Yeah. Are there any questions about like ethics or portions of ethics that aren't really clear? I feel like we all have a general idea of what constitutes as being safe practices and everything, but I just want to make sure that we all have that understanding. And now I'll talk a little bit about some of the engineering economics. So this is like the financial aspects of the project, and provides like tools for decision making, and then like also assessing like the cost of projects, because you have to bid most projects, you have to like bid out, and then whoever had like the best bid will normally get the project. Um, but that also comes at costs at times. Like you might have to figure out how to balance everything out. So this is kind of what the section is going to talk about. So I don't know if you ever had a Dr. Mork's class. He teaches power courses, normally graduate levels, but he always says time is a bad thing, especially when it comes to faults and everything. But there's also a time when I had him last semester where he said time is valued by money. Everything on this world is money, which he's kind of not wrong, because if you think about it, um, when you're working, you get a salary. That's money. You are building a project, that's going to cost money. So everything has like monetary value to it. And so when you are planning and when you are doing your designs and when you are actually an engineer in the field, you have to take into account like, how is my work, how is my time, how is what I'm doing going to benefit or hurt the person that is actually spending this money for me to do this project. So some big things you have to think about are like the payback periods. Like, so a project costs $30,000 to start up. In 10 years, you make like 50,000. You got a payback period relatively fast, and then you made money on top of that. That's actually a very typical question you'll see on the FE. And then the net presence value calculates the difference between cash inflow and outflow. So essentially the same thing. Like, you spent $30,000 to get this project up and running, but you made $50,000 from it. So the net present value would be like $20,000. So, and then the internal rate of return is the discount rate that makes the net value of a project zero. So these that is a very interesting concept that I am not very qualified to explain upon. Um, and that's where I'll leave that, because there are going to be questions on IRR, and it'll be comparing the different rates of IRR to each other, and you have to determine what project to go with based on those internal rates of return. And I can't say for sure that would be on the exam, but they are questions that I've seen on practice exams. All right. So then there's different costs in engineering. So you got your fixed costs, which would be like your one-time costs that for like materials or production levels, or like salaries that are capped. So like yearly salaries, not hourly. And then some variable costs would be like those hourly labor costs, and some materials that have fluctuating prices. So this could be like the price of wood. We know that can fluctuate really quickly depending on time of year, how much is available, and other supply and demand problems. But then other things might set other like materials would have a set value because you have to order them and you won't get them for like 5 years. Which, if you know anything about power generation right now, that is the time wait you have to wait on a transmission or transformer, sorry. And then opportunity costs. These are represented by the potential benefits loss when choosing an alternate over another. So like if you went with one supplier over another, you might be losing more money by sticking with one supplier because I trust them over someone else that might have something similar for a bit cheaper. But And then, so a 25% estimate return on investment, the net present value calculation indicates that the investment is supposed to yield like 25% of what you spent on it, or like you'll make 25%. And then that is like part of things that, I don't know how to phrase this. Um, so there's normally in bigger companies, I've only worked with bigger companies, so I can't speak for smaller ones, but there is a engineer who is just an estimator, who their only job is to try and get projects. And so they use this net present value of like approximately 25. It depends on company for their standards, but they will bid out when they're making their bids, they will bid like that 25% higher because that's how much profit they want to try to make. So when they figure out the labor cost, the product, like the material costs, and other like one-time costs, so if they need permits or something, they'll calculate all of those and then they'll add the 25% to get that profit. So, the firm can keep going on. But 25 isn't a set hard number. I've seen on practice questions, they use 15 and 10% a lot. So, and normally it's not like asking you to do calculations. It's more like, okay, this is a project and then this is a project. Like it's a lot of comparison in this section. For example, so you have Plan A, which is a cost-effective solution with a shorter implementation timeline. Its advantages include lower initial investments and minimal operational disturbances. However, it may compromise some performance aspects, leading to potential long-term maintenance and challenges that could impact overall success. While as Plan B, it has a higher initial investment, but offers superior performance and reliability. This option promises larger longevity and reduces maintenance costs over time. While upfront cost is greater, the enhanced benefits can lead to higher overall satisfaction and effectiveness in meeting project goals. So, as an engineer, you see these two options and you have to determine what one is better. And it might depend on who is providing you the information. It might depend on who you are like doing the engineering drawings for. Maybe they don't care about having to do maintenance down the road. Like they want to have it in, and then maybe in 3 years they want to replace the equipment anyway. So that maintenance might not be the end of the world. But alternatively, they might want the best equipment that they can get right away and then not have to deal with maintenance down the road. So you have to evaluate, you have to think, and there's a lot of other factors than just what is provided in these blobs. But if we were to look at this, and if this was like an exam question, they would probably be expecting alternative B as the better solution because they're like, yes, it's more upfront costs, but you won't have those additional costs from maintenance, which would save whoever money in the long run. So does this all kind of make sense? Am I going too fast? Do I need to explain anything? All right. All right. So then the engineering economic timeline. So economics doesn't just happen at the start and end. It's throughout the whole process. So when I was talking about like bidding for projects, that would happen in the project definition. So that's what those bidding engineers would do. They would define the project, define how they would like the estimate materials, estimate labor costs, and they would send it off to the actual engineers that would be working on the project and be like, hey, is this accurate enough? And normally they would say yes, or if they say no, then they have to revamp it, and then they will get the bid. When they do that, then they do all the data collection, they start doing the drawings, and like all of it will slowly build. Like you'll start building, creating your bill of materials, you'll start actually ordering the parts, you'll start actually having it implemented to start building, and then you have all the decisions kind of like coming together, and all those like prices will slowly add up, and you'll see the actual cost of the economics throughout the whole decision. So it's not just a start and kind of thing, it's a throughout the entire project there's economic decisions. So all that being said, some main areas to look for your prep are focus on areas such as like ethics in professional practice and engineering economics. These equate to about like 8-ish questions on the exam.
It's 4 to 6 for ethics and professional practice, and then 5 to 8 for engineering economics.
All right. So if you're looking on the low end, that's about 10 questions total for the 2 sections. Not by far any one of the bigger sections, but still important to look at. So how to actually practice some of these problems. We are providing practice problems today, but if you go online, you can find practice books or practice exams that have already happened, and you can work on some of those problems. And there is also, if any of the concepts that I talked about didn't necessarily click, or you want to learn more, like especially like IRR or something else, there are videos on YouTube, and there are also videos through a website that I will post at the after all of this. We'll get all your guys' names and everything and send it out, because there are more explanation videos than what a student like myself can provide. But then for the ethical reasoning for the exam, look at the problem, make the best like judgment that you can that would make the most ethical sense. If something seems wrong, that's probably an indication it is not the correct answer. I will just leave it at that. So, some other key like takeaways. There's going to be ethics in everything you do, and a lot of it is ensuring integrity, accountability, and safety throughout your entire engineering process. There's professional standards like IEEE that you would have to adhere to, and then economics is fundamental in every single project. So are there any questions? No. Okay. So I hope I did the. If you want to get into contact with us, you can email Jacob or I through the emails that our advisor sent out. Otherwise, you can email the entire e-board, and we'll be happy to answer questions. But if there are no questions right now, I handed out, as you guys came in, practice questions. There's 10 questions, 5 on economics and 5 on ethics. When you're taking the exam, you have slightly less than 6 hours to do the exam for 110 questions. So that equates to about 2 minutes per question. So since there are 10 questions here, I will put a 20-minute timer. If you get done with the questions beforehand, there is a solution manual up here at the front. You can just check your answers against the solution manual. Otherwise, when the time is up and you still haven't completed it, you can come up and check it. if we run out of time and someone kicks us out of the room and you haven't had time to check your solutions, like I said, we'll get all your emails and then I'll just email out the solutions to all you guys. So I will get 20-minute timer. Okay. And you can begin. And for online students, I'm going to scroll through and you can screenshot. Sorry, I'm trying to figure this out, Kyle. All right. So time is up. Probably has been up for a bit. I will be posting the solution manuals in the caption of the video when it gets added onto YouTube at some point. And if you haven't already, if you can, please sign the paper if you're interested. If you are online and you know you'll be regularly watching or coming to the online session, please Google chat message me or email me so that I have an idea of how many people I'm expecting each week, so I don't print off like 20 pages and no one shows up every single of them. Anyways, have a good day, everyone.
Thank
And thank you.
So when do you expect to